Greetings, everyone! Welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the worlds of Ravenloft, the Demiplanes of Dread? I hope you are prepared, for darkness approaches, and this thing that go bump in the night may once again haunt you. We're going to be talking about another Dreadlord today, the Hive Queen of Marikith, Lady of Timor, ruler of the Sewers, and both in the original D&D and 5e. We'll discuss it. Join me, your host here, Tantas Naravan Dracovin, as I lead you through a gateway through time and space, opening it to Timor, or its current land. That's part of it. Again, we'll discuss it. But if you're ready to travel there, and head into the darkness, to travel through the mists, grab my hand. And please do remember to give me a little bit of a tip here, like subscribing and bell, and let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. 1, 2, 3, let us go. Ravenloft once. Now, there are two main books I'm going to mention here. There's technically a third book, but it's not really important to talk about. I'll explain why. But the two main books that I used to look into this, which do paint two images of the Hive, before the Grand Cavalcade and after. These two books are the Domains of Dread and Isle of Terror. The Isle of Terror book is the one that's pre-Grand Cavalcade. The Domains of Dread is post. And these are important distinctions because it leads us to Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, where the Hive Queen is mentioned in a single sentence at the end of it. The Xerxia Paridon entry in Van Richten's Guide. The small entries in the Domains of Ravenloft, in the back end of it. Yeah, it mentions their monstrous Hive Queen. Let's explain all this. Let's discuss all this. Let's dive into it. And this is a map here of the Isles of Terror. And the reason I'm having this is it does show a realm here. One that's going to be very important to our discussion here, to a degree. Again, it's because it's both confirmed in 5e and not in a lot of... It makes things very interesting. But if you look over all the way on the opposite end on here, on the side here, on the left side, you can see on this image, there is a land called Xerxia. Xerxia is going to be what's important here for us today. Xerxia is what's mentioned in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. And it's going to be important here, because explaining the Hive Queen is understanding her existence. We're going to talk about her. We're going to talk about her original land. We're going to talk about the new land she's in as of 5e2. She and her Timor have merged with Xerxia and its city, Paridon. That's what happens post the Grand Cavalcade. It starts with two city demiplanes of Dread that merge into one, with one still being the same as it was above, but a second domain of Dread underground in the sewers. Fascinating, isn't it? Let's look at the Hive Queen first, though, to understand her, the leader of this place, her history, and where her original land, Timor, in its original form, came. And there she is in all her glory as she appears in imagery of the Domains of Dread. We know what she looks like, we know what she is. And this is her form as the Queen of the Marikith. I will also explain this here, too, because she's probably less connected with the Marikith anymore, and more connected with the Carrion Stalkers, which have some thematic similarities in a lot of ways. So it makes sense that we're not bringing back all the monsters when we come into 5e, they're just making a new one. Anyway, the Queen, Her Majesty. She's roughly 11 feet in length, kind of humanoid, arachnid, 4 legs, 4 arms, jet black, molted, venomous, orange, red and orange splotches, thin, muddy hair, oily corona, long fangs that drip venom, her red, macabre-like jack-o'-lantern eyes, poisonous stinger, which she can lay eggs from. to birth her brood. Yeah. That's it. If you are to fight her, you have to head into the depths of Timor. You have to battle through the hordes of her creations. The Marikith, if you're looking in older editions, or in the newer editions now, the Carrion Stalkers, and the creatures they create, because the Carrion Stalkers are parasites. That enter into corpses, infect bodies. So you can see why there is going to be importance in that. But who is this man? Who is she? Well, the one that became the Hive Queen is connected to the fact that she was a princess of a royal house. Now, between the two various parts of the editions and the storyline, it kind of is a little muddled between before and after the Grand Conflict, so I'll keep this kind of simple to the basic story about it. But the fact is that she was under her mother. Her mother was a wicked queen. That's the easiest way to describe it. She involved a lot of money, heavily taxed her people, tried to starve them, had to send them to poverty, built massive, powerful cities. Now, the fact is, she also theoretically built her city on top of the Marikith Hive, basically because she had a fear of them, and wanted to basically prove her bravery. You know. The princess knew the people were suffering, didn't really care. She hated her mother. She also blamed the peasants for not being able to stand up for themselves. They're like, why aren't you doing anything about this? I hate her, but, you could also do something about this. You're relying on me? She wanted to give her money. And here's where the story kind of gets a little muddled about the exact what happened, but the fact is, in the general story, sometimes she had a lover, sometimes she didn't. But she was in a relate. She also had a lover in a powerful spellcaster. Boom! That's where it gets to. Or was the spellcaster just hating her for other reasons? Again, this gets into the muddling of the story in a little bit. But we'll go for the kind of regardless. She hatched a plan to basically frighten her mother to death. She wanted to do that. She would transform Marikith in appearance, things she feared, boogie boogity boogie. Mom dies of a heart attack. Make it kind of illusionary, so it's not a real, so if anybody attacks, they don't know about it, no one knows about it. Anyway, turns out, in general story, regardless, wizard guy pissed off at her. Was this because something she did? Was this, and there's a big event, or was it because she knew she had an actual lover she liked, and she's just this guy was being led on? He's like, oh man, you're leading me on, you seduced me, you're trying to get me to help you with this thing, when you have a real lover that, you want to marry and make the king once everything is said and done here. I kind of don't like that. Kind of pisses me off. So, yes. Regardless, though, the wizard cast a spell. Whether there was vengeance in there, whether there was deception in there, she turned into Marikith. The illusion seemingly there. Mom died. Things faded. The illusion became reality. Was it because the wizard cast a polymorph spell instead? Was it because some kind of strange curse came in about? Again, this is the muddleness about the backstory of this beginning. But we know that, regardless, the magic interacted in some way. The magic changed her truly into a Hive Queen of the Marikith. She had transformed into the monster she is now. And then, like any good creature that's now birthed into a monster after being transformed into it, went on a murderous killing spree throughout the city. Killed her lover, her hunters, everybody, and retreated eventually to the sewers when she was seemingly driven off. But then, a mist rose around the city of Timor and the sewers of Timor, and the mists of Ravenloft claimed them both. So, yeah, there are some things to note. She's still vain, hates her appearance. She now views the creatures around her as superior to her old subjects, because they're perfectly obedient and feed themselves. She does have an ashamedness of her appearance, though. But She also, in old lore at very least, I don't know how this would affect how things would change with the new connection to theoretical carrion stalkers, but, and again, I'm going to note, we know that it's still the same Hive Queen because monstrous Hive Queen is capitalized. Carrion Stalker isn't. If it was just a Carrion Stalker Hive Queen, it wouldn't be capitalized. It's a name. So it's important to know that, yeah, we're talking about this. But anyway, she murders any Hive Queen eggs that she lays. You know, doesn't want the same kind of thing to happen to her as to happen to her mother. So, yes. She can close the borders of her domain, of course, and basically putrid clouds in the area that make it difficult to travel through, eventually kind of paralyzing you and doing damage. And, yeah. That's a basic appearance of this creature. The Hive Queen. Now we have to talk about her first land. The original Timor and its sewers. Because Timor mimics, in a lot of ways, Paridon. Let me explain. The original Timor, as we know it, is a city, domain that's a city, and the domain underneath it. In the original, Timor was this kind of paradise kind of looking place, flowers, great architecture, but underneath there is this dark sewer. And there's also these disappearing folks. The city is partially empty. People have been disappearing, going away, dwindling. It was originally 30,000 people, down to 5,000. It's lorded over by a powerful city council that has put guards in place. People travel not alone anymore. You never go anywhere if you're alone, because you never know when something's going to grab you, drag you into the sewers. But also, there's another issue that exists in the town. The Queen and her Marikith hunting the streets isn't the only issue. Guess what also is there? Murderous doppelgangers up in the cities. Now, they are minor in comparison. This is important. Doppelgangers are important to note. So then when the Grand Cavalcade happened, we have a new boss in town, a new city on top. Because we have to look at Soto. I'm not going to talk about Soto today, but he is important. This is another Darklord. Let's talk about Paridon, and of course, the city of Paridon, the land is in, Zaricia. Zaricia, hey, is basically a land that is just a city, Paridon. Now, it is important to note that it was technically more than that originally. Zaricia was. It was a small land with the city of Paridon at its center. So, unlike Timor, it was more, but it was lorded over by Darklord Doppelganger Soto. When the Grand Conjunction happened, there's two different grand things that happened. The entire city became the domain. The rest of Zaricia shrunk. And Timor merged with Zaricia to form the Zarician cluster. And this would have been in 744 BC in the timeline of history. So, we do have a date when the Grand Conjunction occurred and when the two merged together. One city over top of the new Timor, the sewer Timor, the dark hive lands of Timor. Because it was once its own city. But its city disappeared. Who knows what happened to all those residents? But because they had this connection and similarity in a lot of ways, when the Grand Conjunction occurred, they merged together. It's a new land. Something a little different, something completely different. So now, when we talk about Timor, it is still separate. It's still a separate domain, overlorded by a separate dreadlord. But you know what's separating it out? Sewer entrances. Manhole covers. Yeah. The holes in the street lie to a dark area, where in older editions Marikith, or newer editions, carrion stalkers, and their animated corpses. And of course, the top of the streets, Soda, now ruling over the Doppelgangers. 2 Darklords, 2 areas, one that tendrils out to reach from the sewers, while another stalks the shadows. Really pleasant. Now why, to finish up here, because we're going to talk about 5e for a second, why does carrion stalkers feel appropriate? I didn't talk about this video. Because our good queen's sting here can transform someone into a Marikith. If you sting, you go into a catatonic state, and after a week, you rise to Marikith. Beyond laying eggs that rise as Marikiths, she can sting someone and almost parasitically transform you into it. So the entire idea of parasites transforming something, this is a little different. Now, it's a carrion stalker that's getting into you and animating your corpse. It's a little different. But thematically, it fits so well. It fits just as fine. Because carrion stalkers did exist in the old editions. We just have removed Marikith from existence and replaced them with carrion stalkers. And perhaps meat puppets work just the same for her. Her obedient, feed themselves on their meat puppets, carrion stalkers, feels just the same. Instead of the horrible Marikith that stalk the streets and drag people down there to feed and murder them. I'm sorry, Marikith are a little, horrific in their own ways, in a lot of ways. So it makes sense that perhaps something that's a little less horrible, dragging things down to be eaten alive, instead just, murder you, infest your corpse with a big old bug. Tomato, I say, but one feels a little less horrible, maybe? I don't know, maybe they went for the easy horror theme there. But there you go. It's fascinating to see that a single sentence can establish a Darklord in 5e. It was Zaricia, with Paridon and Sodo, that entire section in Van Richten's guide, that, is all about that. All about Sodo. But a single sentence talking about the sewers, the carrion stalkers, and a capitalized Hive Queen is enough for us, those that know about the Hive Queen, know about Zaricia and Paridon's connection with Timor, to be like, oh, she's canon too. Even when we don't even talk about it. Right there, canon. Her domain, the sewers and darkness of Timor, remain. And so, again, this leads back to Grand Conjunction happened. A lot of the stuff in 5e, it's kind of hard to tell where the history and timelines and stuff match up. This is one of those points in time where I can point out and be like, it matches up pretty well. Granted, you could just go back to the old stuff of 2e if you really wanted to and just update it to 5e. You don't have to really look at Van Richten's guide for updates anyway. But it's still a fascinating part about the entire history of Hive Queen, that she's basically still remained a Darklord with her horrible story of, attempting to scare your mother to death, being transformed into a monster, becoming that monster, stalking the streets, and, being driven to the sewers by those you loved and hated, and then, becoming the Hive Queen of a horrible monsters that stalk the people above. As Ravenloft stories go, probably not the most horrible, but it does feel very Ravenloft. It feels very Ravenloft. I'm not gonna lie. There's some pretty bad and horrible stories, especially in older editions, so this is a pretty simple one. It's unique and interesting, and I hope you enjoyed learning about her. And that means if you want to use, from Van Richten's guide, Zaricia and Sodo, just remember what stalks the streets, The sewers underneath. Look out for those storm drains. These little water eats off into the underground. Something. Thank you. Please check out all my other stuff, whether it's live on Twitch or over on YouTube. It helps me greatly. If you're over on the Twitch side, check me out gaming, chatting, and all the things, but all my tabletop stuff does end up on YouTube. It's recorded over there. Whether it's videos like this one, live plays like Advent's Ball Wednesdays at 8, I do recommend checking that out, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, fun game, or discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6, my kind of talk show, podcasty thing that may eventually become a real podcast on that day. And, of course, as I said, everything tabletop is eventually uploaded over to the YouTube side, so if you miss stuff live, you can always join it there. But if you're on the YouTube side, do things like I said at the beginning, do the little pleasing things, liking and all that kind of stuff, subscribing. And hey, what do you think about it? What other changes do you think might have occurred to the Hive Queen? Because we know she exists in 5e, but how else do you think the kind of evolved Ravenloft would evolve her, especially now being Queen of the Carrion Stalkers rather than just the Marikith? Or do you think that perhaps the Carrion Stalkers and Marikith are still there? That the Carrion Stalkers think that Notice or something like that. That maybe they're now creatures from the same area. There's a lot of questions about that. What do you think about all this? How would you use it? Let me know in the comments. Remember to check my social medias. And again, until the next time we dive into Ravenloft for another Darklord domain and all those kind of things, or somewhere else, another role-playing game or other tabletop game, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.